Good evening. Welcome to the August 22nd meeting of the Westborough Planning Board. We have a new feature tonight. We're displaying the agenda, so I will not read it into the minutes until we get to the individual items. Just a reminder, the meeting is being recorded. First item on the agenda is an A&R plan for 180-182 Turnpike Road. Jenny, why don't you introduce this, and then we can turn to Randy.
So the board received in their packet an A&R plan, which includes the parcels 180 and 182 Turnpike Road, in addition to 208 Turnpike Road. So the applicant is requesting that the board review the above plan, which I'll bring up in a moment, to determine if it meets the criteria for an A&R endorsement. So the applicant is proposing changes to the 3 lots to create 2 lots, which would be 208 Turnpike Road and 180 Turnpike Road. I have reviewed the A&R plan, and it does meet the requirements that we request in the subdivision regulations for an A&R. I will bring up the plan. And then also in this, the applicant did include easement information to show what would be the proposed B-wall trail system, which would run along the rear of the parcel at 180 Turnpike and 208 Turnpike.
Okay. Randy, any comments?
Yeah,
Just name and record, sorry.
I can add a little more detail if you like. Randy Waterman, 31 East Main Street, and this is Josh Elise Smith. He is the counsel for Blue Ocean, who is the owner of the property at 208. So essentially, as Jenny indicated, the upper part of the plan you can see here is the portion that is abutting Park Street and Route 9. And so the strip of the right-of-way for the old railroad bed is at the bottom of that plan, and the top part of the plan is the existing property at 208, and then next to it is the rock-on property that everybody probably recognizes from all the fire pits that are sitting out on the property. If you could pan down to the bottom of that page, so this is really the overall picture, and the main reason we're here tonight is that we wanted to reconnect the lot 80 and 182 out on Turnpike Road into a single building lot. Now that we have site plan approval for the Hyundai dealership, we're combining those 2 parcels into 1 lot. And you can see on this plan, at the bottom of the plan is the old railroad bed that runs on your right from Carmax, to your left runs out to Park Street. That's a total of just about a half a mile, 2,500 feet or so. So the entire property is shown on this section of the plan. And as Jenny mentioned, over at Park Street, there's a small parcel that's getting transferred to Blue Ocean, and a small non-building parcel that is shown on the plan that would be transferred back to the 180 property where the Hyundai dealership would be. So that's really all the lot line changes are shown on that plan. The next 2 sheets, sheets 2 and 3, show the location of the future B-Walt bicycle easement. This is starting at Park Street, and you can see roughly centered in that easement where in the old right-of-way bed where it's feasible, there's a 20-foot wide permanent construction easement for the B-Walt. And then on the outside on either side, there's a temporary construction easement that's 10 feet wide on each side. And that tapers a little bit when you get to Park Street because there's an existing utility pole on Park Street and a hydrant that needs to be relocated. So we made sure we kept the full 20-foot permanent easement going out to Park. And the 2 temporary construction easements taper a little bit. And then if we pan down to the next sheet, sheet number 3 shows just the extension of that going back out. And again, over on the right side of the sheet is where we touch up to the Carmax property. And the 2 existing buildings on the property right now are right there at the top On the left or west side is 182 Turnpike, that's the multi-story office building. And then next to it is 180 Turnpike Road, that's the building adjacent to CarMax. So that is where the new Hyundai dealership would be located. So again, the purpose of the plan was really to combine, amalgamate those into a single building lot. And then we also made the lot changes at Park Street. So that's really the gist of what we're doing. And open to any questions.
Any questions from the board? I do have a question. Do we, how does this affect the site plan approval? Do we have to do a de minimis change vote, and is that on the
Yes.
future agenda then?
We're hoping to get the plans turned around to you by next Tuesday so that Jenny would have a time to look at those and then be on for the September 5th meeting, I believe. And so that would be, as you mentioned, as we talked to with the building inspector, an administrative change to the plans. And it's essentially would be just removing some parking spaces that were surplus anyway from the Hyundai plan, which I assume nobody would be upset with. But that's the plan for that.
Right.
So, Mr. Chair, just if I could say, again, for the record, Josh Lee Smith, I'm an attorney with Bowditch and Dewey. As Randy mentioned, I'm representing Blue Ocean in connection with this. What is behind the scenes is a land swap that's occurring here. And as you know, a lot of these lots, these parcels, the configuration is somewhat odd, and they're devised currently based on the historic trail nature of and the trolley that used to traverse through these various parts of the town. I know that there have been some meetings with staff in connection with the trail easement and how the sequencing might work in connection with that. I don't want to go off the trail, so to speak, with respect for tonight. Tonight is just really whether this can be endorsed as an A&R. But I do want to confirm that on behalf of my client, that Blue Ocean certainly has an interest in granting the trail easement that was at the outset of when discussions were first had with the prospective buyer to do this land swap, that was part of the deal. So Deborah Penta, who is the principal of Blue Ocean, has every intention to grant that easement. So I guess we can talk offline with staff further with respect to what that form of easement would look like. I know that CarMax did grant an easement, a trail easement, back in whenever that was, a few years back. And I know that, I believe that form has been circulated amongst certain folks. I would imagine that form would be similar to what would be the instrument that would be granted here by both Blue Ocean as well as the future owner.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was prepared by current town council or CarMax council or who prepared that prior one. So I'm sure everybody's going to want to look at it again.
Sure.
So, but once this is endorsed, assuming that's successful tonight, Blue Ocean will not need to come back in on the 5th. That's just your client then?
I think with our discussion with Fred the other day, he was thinking Blue Ocean probably would need to do administrative site plan change as well because the lot areas change, so.
Yes, that's correct. They would need to come in for a limited site plan review with staff just because they're changing the parking orientation on their lot.
Right, and I recall that from our discussion, but that would be done with staff and not with the board.
Yes.
So we won't see you on the 5th, we'll just see you on the 5th, okay.
So the 5th is the planning board meeting where you would need to request the change or the modification to the site plan that was approved for Hyundai.
Yep.
That's what the 5th is. With Blue Ocean Capital, that's totally separate. The board will not see that site plan review except maybe just for reference that the meeting with staff occurred.
Okay. I guess those are all of my questions. Anything else? We have a motion on this?
Yeah, I move that the planning board approve and endorse the A&R plan entitled Approval Not Required Plan of Land 180, 182, and 208 Turnpike Road and Park Street, Westborough, dated 8/18/23.
I second that motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's 5-0 in favor. Thank you. We'll see you
Thank you.
in a couple of weeks. Next item on the agenda is a modification to the site plan review decision for 66 Otis. Again, Jenny, if you want to just start us on this, and we can turn to the applicant.
Yes, thank you. So the planning board had completed a site plan review for 66 Otis Street, also known as Cold Harbor Brewing, that was approved on November 7th, 2021. The project has been completed and is open for business. However, part of the site plan decision had included the requirement that the applicant construct a sidewalk along the property frontage. And then also the applicant was to grant an easement for the portion of the B wall, which would be along there. Since that time, we did receive a grant through Mass Trails for the construction of that sidewalk or that walking path. So in discussions with my predecessor, it was decided that the applicant does not need to construct the sidewalk, that it will be covered under the grant. However, the decision does reference in the condition that they were to construct it. So the applicant is requesting that that portion of that condition be removed. So in the memo, you can see that's condition number 15 of the original site plan decision, that the board can decide by majority vote whether this modification requires a formal amendment or can be modified as stated. I'm sorry, it's condition number 7.
7, I think.
Yes.
That's a typo on my end.
Just name and address and any comments.
Sure. Thank you, Patrick McCarty, McCarty Engineering. Happy to see you all again. It's been almost 2 years. So since the approval was issued in November of '21, we're happy to report that the brewery's done. We received our certificate of occupancy a couple weeks ago. And as we all hoped, it's been crazy busy over there and succeeding like we all hoped he would. So we're just trying to do a little housekeeping here. Since the site plan review was recorded at the Registry of Deeds, and condition number 7 states that he has to build the section of B-Walt on the property, we're hoping that the board will vote to amend that condition to remove the obligation of construction, but to keep the easement granting portion of that. We did prepare an easement plan. We sent it to Lisa Lane at the DPW to review, and to be honest, it kind of got lost in the weeds. So I'll follow back up with her and see if she has any comments on the easement plan itself, and we'll get that recorded so the town has the easement. But through discussions with Jim Robbins at the time and Dan Mills from MDM, the obligation to actually construct this portion of the trail, Jim said, was no longer required since the grant was coming through for the construction. So really just hoping to do a little housekeeping here on the title portion of the property.
Okay, questions from the board? John?
Maybe I missed this. Did you find the email from Jim confirming that?
Yes, the applicant included the email exchange in the packet as part of the letter, I believe.
Yes.
Can we do anything if Lisa hasn't reviewed the plan?
Well, yeah, I mean, my one concern on it that was the 7-foot sidewalk and the 2-foot grass strip that isn't being eliminated. Was that in the right of way or was that on your property?
No, it's on our property, which is why we're granting the easement. But
Well, how wide is the new easement going to be?
so I guess I'll back up to give a little further explanation. So back in April of last year, Dan Mills from MDM and Jim and myself had a Zoom meeting. Following that Zoom meeting, Dan forwarded me his AutoCAD design file for the layout of the Otis Street improvements, which include both widening of Otis Street to push the curb line back and the construction of the trail. So we based our easement on that. And so we issued revision 3 set of site plans dated August 18th of last year that were submitted to the building department as part of our building permit application process. standard procedure in town is a copy of those go to Fung at the engineering department to review before he checks off on Permit Pro that we're okay from the DPW engineering side. So Fung actually caught that, and he reached out to Jim and said, just making sure that these changes are okay. And Jim said, yes, they're okay. So our plans that were issued for construction actually call out proposed Otis Street improvements by others, which is what Fung noted, and a temporary driveway out to the existing curb line, which is in the right-of-way. The proposed curb line is actually just inside the right-of-way, and our easement line that's shown on that is enough room for the widening and the full 10-foot trail, which unfortunately is going to mean the removal of that last beautiful tree that's dead center on the site. National Grid made us take down the one on the left for our electric service, and the other one had to go for the drainage and infiltration. So that's the sad part of all this, is those trees are so nice, but unfortunately, they're all going to have to go. So I think that's the set that was, the last set that was approved that's up on the screen now. The ones that were for the building permit were revision 3.
Okay. Any more questions?
No.
I'm still, the motion suggests that we replace the existing clause 7 with this new language in quotes, but I'm just unclear. The applicant shall grant an additional 6-foot easement that shall allow the, but additional to what? Isn't the resulting easement going to be?
Jenny,
like
did
20
you prepare that?
I believe that was with removing the wording regarding the construction of the sidewalk and then taken from your request also.
We're replacing clause 7. I just wanted to read that the applicant will provide
An easement.
I don't know how wide that easement's going to be, but the applicant will provide a 16, 20-foot easement, I don't know, right?
No, so I think, if I may propose what might be cleaner, would be to reference these plans. Because if you look at the plan that's on the screen,
Right.
you'll see the existing curb line of Otis Street, the 2-foot strip, and then the 7-foot trail that we had proposed. Where that 7-foot sidewalk ends now is essentially the new curb line of Otis Street.
Right, but that's
So-
still the,
So if the site plans, and I'm sorry, I didn't think to email them to you, the site plans here, so the last 3 parking spots from the 24 dimension down
yeah.
were moved over to where the side parking spaces are, so that easement line could be pushed back. So if you reference the easement line as shown on the revision 3 site plans dated 8/18/22, that's the easement line that matches the easement plan.
Okay, so we don't need to reference a width necessarily, we'll just reference this.
Correct.
The plan with the building permit.
Yeah, the
Okay.
plan on file with the building department, which is revision 3 dated 8/18/22, Otis Street / issue for construction.
And I can pull that up if it's on Permit Pro.
Correct.
So, so we're going to change the language of the motion to the applicant shall grant an easement as shown on revision 3
Site plans.
of the site plan
Dated
dated 8/18,
8/18/22.
that shall allow the town to construct a 10-foot wide shared use path. It's understood that the easement is, okay. I'm okay with that. I just have one question. You mentioned that you got the certificate of occupancy. Is that, is it typical to grant a certificate of occupancy while there's still an outstanding condition? Or is it?
Well, it depends on what the condition is. I mean, I think.
Well, that's what my question is this?
Yeah, was this a temporary certificate of occupancy?
No, so
or
Westborough
was-
doesn't do temporary certificate of occupancies. So I won't get into too much discussion. Let's just say that our final fire department inspection lasted from 9 in the morning till 7:30 at night. And we had another permit that's currently open because we had to do what's called a BDA, or radio signal strength survey, that all new buildings are required to do. It tests the incoming and outgoing signal strength for your first responders, police and fire. So since we have an open building permit for the construction of that BDA closet and the associated work that goes along with it, the repeaters, Fred and the Chief Purcell and Chris Knight were okay with kind of a conditional certificate of occupancy to get Will open.
More than fine with that, right?
So-
But I just don't like seeing,
I would say it's not typical at all to do that. I think it was
This-
because of the
of the-
circumstances.
Yeah, of all the planning board conditions,
I would
this
have
is the only-
expected this to get resolved before the final certificate of occupancy, but that's just I guess, red tape kind of
Well, I
thing.
think, yeah, it's up to.
I don't want to hold it up.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's-
mean,
Well,
it's
it's open
open.
and they have
let-
it.
Yeah, then they have it,
I
so.
mean, that's it, but I think generally, since this town doesn't offer conditional, I mean, often towns give conditional C of Os, and I think in situations where whatever the condition is, it's really up to the town to make the decision at that point as to whether that is going to continue to hold up the opening
Well, yeah,
of a particular business.
I guess I agree with that, but who makes that decision?
Usually the building department.
Yeah, so Mr. Leonardo made that decision, and with the condition that I provided him a letter explaining this whole thing and signing it, that I was committing to address this.
I just want to, I don't want to belabor this tonight, but I think we might need to look at our internal procedures on occupancy permits to cover situations like this, and I guess ask the question why the town doesn't do temporary COs.
If I could, I know we don't want to drag this out, but I did ask that question because we build all over the state, and I would say it's the exception to not issue them. Most towns, it's the norm. Some towns, it's actually the requirement. West Boylston will not give you, for example, a final certificate of occupancy until the as-built plan has been reviewed by their consultant and agreed to by the planning board. Let's say I move parking spots around for this. And most communities give temporary first, Auburn, just to make sure you catch this kind of stuff before it goes to final, and they'll bump it along on a 30-day basis. I think this
Yeah,
town
and I
was
actually-
burned in the past by people just going on forever on a temporary and not addressing the open items.
But I actually think it's maybe something we should look at too, where we've done look-back periods, that maybe having a temporary C of O until the look-back period
Yeah,
is.
but the final decision on the CO is up to the building department, really. I mean,
Correct.
it's, we can have discussions about it, but it is up to building inspector to make the decision as to when the final CO is delivered.
I agree with that, and I'm not trying to take authority away from the building department. I just,
Just have to be on the same page.
Oh, exactly. I mean,
I've seen situations in this town, not this, where occupancy permit was granted, and it turned into a huge headache, and
As I said.
we're in court over it, so
It's the building department that, the building inspector that really
Right.
has the decision on that. So, I mean, if there are any problems or questions on that, then they should be discussed with him.
Yeah,
So, yeah, later on in the agenda too, and this is getting a little off topic, we will be talking about the planning board, potential changes to the procedural rules and regulations, so we can definitely add that.
I'm sorry to hold you up.
Oh, no,
Really
that's
has less to do with this request than other questions that I have. So I will make a motion that the planning board approve a modification of condition number 7 of the site plan decision for 66 Otis Street, specifically for Cold Harbor Brewing dated November 7th, 2021, permit number 2021-5, to remove the language that would require the applicant, Cold Harbor Brewing, to construct a sidewalk along the property frontage. The new language for condition number 7 shall read, the applicant shall grant an easement as shown on a revised site plan dated 8/18, as presented to the town, that shall allow the town to construct a 10-foot wide shared use path with grass strip along the frontage of the site. It is understood that this easement has been surveyed and is shown on a final easement plan that was delivered to the town and recorded at the Registry of Deeds. Further, the proposed modification as stated above is consistent with the approval issued by this decision and the purposes and the intent of the original condition, and therefore public hearing is not required. This modification does not change or remove any other finding or condition that is part of this original site plan approval for Cold Harbor Brewing.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor?
Excellent.
Thank you for
Can I
coming
ask a
in.
question that's not associated with this?
Sure.
Do you have an agreement with Amazon for parking?
No.
Are you going to get an agreement with Amazon for parking? There seems, every time I drive past, it seems like there's overflow there, and it just makes sense.
So the property manager, so Will didn't encourage it, but people just see the empty parking lot and
Right.
decided to start parking there. And so the property manager for Amazon did say, stop parking in our parking lot. So Will is looking at other avenues to provide parking.
Yeah, do you think that's going to be an extended problem, or is it just with the opening?
I hope it is, right? I mean,
Well, yes and no, right?
right, you hope
Yeah.
he's as successful as we want him to be, but obviously the parking is an issue.
Right.
Has Amazon said, we're not going to give you any shared parking agreement?
I don't know, I think it was just the property manager. I think it would have to go a little bit above that. And I know he's talking to some other people on Otis Street to potentially maybe do a shuttle or valet, or he's trying to figure that out. But, you know, he's 2 weeks into it. Well,
Right.
not even 2 weeks into
Right.
it, so.
I just see that Amazon parking lot being completely empty every time.
I think,
use
I seem to remember there was some discussion originally about that in some possible way. I don't know that it went any further, but I know I believe there was some original discussion with Amazon about that. And particularly now, since they haven't opened that building or not using it. I know I saw Will at the opening and was talking to him about it at that particular time, because they have 75 spaces is what they've got. And so then the question is, you know, this is brand new, it's open, whether it's gonna, you know, just work itself out over some time, since we're just sort of in the beginning of this. But, you know, he's obviously fully aware of the problem, and the question is,
Right, because it's in his own interest to figure out a solution to it too, because he wants the people in there, so.
Correct.
It could be a little bit of a ramp up, but, you know, we'll see how that plays out. You know, and I guess if we're just speaking openly here, if we had more room on impervious coverage, then we had physical room on the site to fit more parking spots, but the zoning bylaw restricted how much impervious cover we could have. So, maybe certain corridors.
I get that, it's just Amazon, I mean, it's a brewery, not going to necessarily be busy during work hours. Amazon's not going to be
Right.
busy during non-work hours. It just seems like it makes sense.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a liability issue.
What is the coverage in that,
Shared parking agreement.
for that lot?
It was.
With alcohol,
it was
and then people-
60/40, no, it was 50/50 at the time.
Right.
And then I think it's since gone to
gone
60/40.
to 60/40, yeah.
So
50, yeah.
50/50, and we were right there at the time.
But didn't we reduce that open space requirement, so theoretically?
We did 10% of the lot area, so it's a couple thousand square feet.
Theoretically, he could come back and,
No, I mean, I think it would get us like 2 parking spots.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, it doesn't get you
okay, yeah. Well,
anything significant.
that's not going to solve the problem. All right.
The
Okay.
other, there is a huge block of parking directly behind us that's by the Target loading docks that I don't think a single Target customer knows is even there. So that's
Maybe
another
that's an option,
opportunity.
Yeah.
Odd, it must have been to make a parking count at the time that they did site plan approval. So, all right, I won't keep you anymore. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Mark, I just have a question. Is Atlantic going to have to come in front of us to do the same thing with the sidewalks?
I don't remember. Jenny, do you remember the answer to that?
So staff did have a discussion with Atlantic Management, and from looking at the decision, it seems that it's not as specific as this one about constructing the sidewalk or putting the construction of the sidewalk on Amazon, that they will just be funding the construction of the sidewalk in front of their property, so they'll be putting money towards it.
But is the widening of Otis Street going to affect, since it's the widening of Otis Street that's affecting the sidewalk in front of Cold Harbor, is that also affecting in front of Amazon, or is the road wide enough there, the widening is not going to occur there?
We are working on easements with Amazon for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, if they had to do the same thing as Cold Harbor, that we should talk to Fred before he does anything else.
Yeah, no, I think that, as Jenny said, that they're not going to have to come back in because the language was different in that decision, so. But if they do have to come back in, you're right, we should
Yeah.
take another look at that. All right. Next item we have is a continuation of the public hearing for 165 Flanders Site Plan Review application, and I have a letter from Bowler Engineering dated August 17th, addressed to Jennifer Gingras, Planning Director, regarding EG America 165 Flanders Road. Dear Ms. Gingras, on behalf of EG America, we would like to request a continuance of the planning board hearing for the project at 165 Flanders Road until the next planning board meeting in September. If you should have any questions or require additional information, please do not hesitate to contact me. And that's signed Andrew Platt from Bowler Engineering, who is the engineer for the owner and applicant.
Were we not going to try to get more of an explanation out of them as to why they keep getting these extensions? Because I think, Jenny, the last time we talked, you would just send out a notice to them, and, you know, this has been adjourned and adjourned and adjourned, so the question was whether they really should be withdrawing and coming back again. But I understand the main problem has to do with the storage of equipment or something to do with the Mass Pike renovations.
Yes, correct. And actually, we did have quite a few emails back and forth today with counsel for Cumberland Farms, and it appears that there is some miscommunication going on without getting into further details. So they are going to come in and meet with staff, including the conservation director and myself and engineering, so that we can all come to more of an agreement on what's going on, because it seems like, or potentially on their end, they're not communicating with each other, their council, the contractor for the 495-90 project. It's a little messy right now. So they're requesting the continuance to September 5th. However, I would recommend to them again, as I did, that they need to come with an answer for these questions that the planning board had before at that meeting, and not postpone this any longer.
Okay.
Any further questions? Somebody want to motion that? Go
I
ahead.
move that the planning board continue the public hearing for the site plan review application for 165 Flanders Road to Tuesday, September 5th, 2023 at 6:30 PM as requested by the applicant in the letter dated August 17, 2023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is 5-0 in favor. All right, next item on the agenda, continuation of the public hearing to modify commercial component of special permit TOV 2014-1 for Village Commons at 1 Gleason Street. I don't think we've had very much progress on this, but Jenny, why don't you update the board on this?
So the developer was sent a letter on July 26th, which was included, or sent to the board, and this was subsequent to a site visit that was attended by staff and the planning board chair and then the developer. and it essentially outlined specific items that needed to be addressed in the existing special permit, not considering the modification request. And specific deadlines were outlined. Mr. Ansari was also to submit lighting specifications and a photometric plan as well, which he has done, and that will be on the design review board agenda for Thursday, this Thursday. So that's one thing that's almost completed, close to being completed. There were other items that need to be completed by September 1st, including all the landscaping to be completed, the dumpster enclosure installed. There was a water shutoff valve for unit 16 that needed to be modified so that it was flush with the pavement. And then the construction debris and equipment was to be relocated to the front of the property and construction fencing installed. And then a swale to be dug in line with riprap along the property line for Westborough Village. So Mr. Ansari is aware of all of those items that need to be completed by September 1st, and staff will be doing an inspection soon after that to find out if they are completed. And then part of the letter was that if he does not complete these items, then the planning board can request zoning enforcement, which would include fines up to $300 a day until he completed these items, because technically these would put him in violation of his special permit.
Jenny, do you have a site plan you can put up?
I have to say, I kind of drive in there once a week just to kind of check on things, and there's absolutely no movement. Nothing has been done.
Questions while she gets that up?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what comes before the design review board. I mean, we gave them specific instructions as to what kind of lighting we were looking for, which was not where we wanted commercial type lighting to go in there. And see what they've submitted this time.
Right. So I was on the site plan, and one of the things we discussed was the original special permit required a connection between the commercial lot at Westborough Village and this lot. Doesn't seem with the new building that it's going to be that easy to do a connection, and there's nothing to connect to. And I was hoping to pull up the site plan so you could see that the sidewalk along Gleason already does really connect those lots.
Yeah, it does.
So-
I actually went and looked at it because I had thought there was a blank in between, but the sidewalk really runs all the way from Danica Drive, all the way around up through the other development.
Right, and so, but I did notice some, I guess, oversight from our original plan where some curbing was not required and not built, and also a section of the sidewalk. The sidewalk is kind of weird in that it ends at a little crosswalk and doesn't go all the way out to Gleason. You actually have to cross over to the commercial building that he built and then get out to Gleason. And I think it would make more sense if that's particularly where construction fencing is going to be up, and if he just finished that little section of sidewalk out to Gleason, so the residents can actually use that to get out to Gleason for bus stops or to walk down to the train station. And also finish that curbing, because the curbing, just aesthetically, I think it should have been required. So, and functionally, it might help with some of the drainage issues that they're having. I can show you, once Jenny gets that up, what I was proposing, and it would be an additional cost burden that wasn't required in the additional plan. So my thought was we would not have, maybe not require that connection to the adjacent commercial lot in a, as a way to offset the cost of doing this additional curbing and sidewalks, since I don't think that a connection is really functionally necessary. That would require a vote, though, and we're not going to vote on that tonight, since the developer isn't making much progress. But I didn't see that little connection of sidewalk on the list of items, and I was hoping to get that added, and I hate to keep piling on, but
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the most recent one. This is
yeah, it's hard to
pretty
see on this one.
dated. It might be on,
I think it's in the Dropbox, but I'm not sure.
What was the original landscaping plan shown? I wonder if it was shown on there, whether there was additional sidewalk shown on that plan. I don't have it in front of me, but there was there was originally a landscaping plan. and
Yeah, she pulled the,
That's
here, this one will show it.
The one I
This
was
is-
looking for.
This one will show it. If you can zoom in on the upper portion. The northern bound, yeah, all right, that's good. So you can sort of see the sidewalk and that little crosswalk there, that one that she's pointing to now. That's where the sidewalk ends. And so somebody would have to cross to the commercial building and then get out to Gleason. Now, that sidewalk along Fisher Street and Gleason Street is in place and connects Westborough Village to Village Commons and so forth. And people can access the crosswalk, the pedestrian crosswalk to get to the other side of Fisher Street there. But I think from that little crosswalk that's on the site that we originally started at to Fisher Street should be constructed so that people don't have to cross to the commercial side.
The thing is, I don't think people use that sidewalk. I mean, if you're,
Well,
think
you
you
say
have-
that, but when there's construction fencing and construction going on, I think
that
people
they, that they
will
may
use
be,
that.
but I think,
Also-
logically, if you're going to go to do that, you're gonna walk down the middle between the houses. You're not gonna walk out to that, I've never seen anybody near that sidewalk. I would think you'd be walking down, the middle of it, and you'd cross and then, go in front of the commercial building in that way. So, I think I agree with you that it would be nice to have that, but I don't think that is ever gonna be used.
Yeah,
And the
I
question
disagree
is,
with you on that.
Is there some way that we could do this so that, we'll have to work some sort of sidewalk or something when the construction goes in, just for safety purposes, for people to get out to
Yeah, so I
Fisher
disagree.
Street.
I do think people would use that sidewalk, and if nothing else, to get to the bus stop. But, if they're not going to use that sidewalk, why are we making them extend that sidewalk all the way down the site?
Well, that was the original plan that was put in 2015, or whenever originally these plans were put in.
Well,
As I said, I think more importantly, the thing we have to worry about is when the construction begins on the new phase, is to how to protect the citizens and how to enable them to get out to Fisher Street.
and maybe that's the time to bring up that sidewalk or revisit that sidewalk if, in fact, that's a beneficial change or not. We can choose to disagree on it at this point. That's fine.
Should we ask the residents?
I don't think that's a bad idea.
The residents in the back want it to feel like it's a separate development from the apartments in the front. So maybe the sidewalk on the side gives that separation, so they're not having to walk through the new apartments in the future.
I think talking to the residents is a great idea.
Yeah.
As far as access goes, and what are they actually going to use?
Well, so the other thing though, Hazel, is when the construction is being done on that new building, you're not going to be able to walk through that open space between the,
Fenced off.
it's going to all be fenced off.
No, I
You're gonna have to
realize
go
that.
up.
That's what I was saying, is that when we work out that aspect, then we're going to have to work out some sort of access for the residents to get out to Fisher Street, and whether there's going to be any way that they will be able to go down and go through. I mean, it's going to depend on where that construction fencing is going to go and how people are going to get around it.
Right.
And who knows until they
Well,
decide to do it.
we're still waiting for all those plans, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
I think we're getting ahead of ourselves on that, but
Yeah, the board can certainly ask for that modification or discuss it when
the
he
only reason I
comes
bring
back
it up
with
now is
plans.
because he's extending the sidewalk. So he's also, we've asked him to put in curbing on, can you show them where the curbing is not in place? If you,
Yeah, so one of the items that was not included on the original plan was curbing along the landscaped areas and driveways. There was no curb cut, so the grass is flush with the pavement, and
so
it was surprising to see that when we went out there.
yeah, that was obviously missed on the original plans. There is curbing on one side, on the northerly side of Dania Drive, but not on the house side, and but I guess my point is, if you're going to have an asphalt contractor in to do those sidewalks and curbs, it's not much of a stretch to extend that little section of sidewalk, and I do think it would be beneficial, particularly when the construction's going on.
Now, where are you talking about the curbing? Is it that side or the other side? I mean,
Yeah,
down-
this is the side where I'm highlighting where there is curbing, but on this side, along the actual property lines, there's no curbing.
Yeah, that was because the residents, of course, who came into us, and they want to have larger parking spaces there. That was their request, and they can't do anything about that till they get their homeowners association turned over to them. So I would think, as far as curbing went, if they want to increase their parking spaces, which they're talking about, then you don't want to run curbing all the way down that side. So that's all that's the one question I have on that.
But the problem is, I think we don't know how long it's going to take him to release the association.
Well, right.
And I think
But
he
if we
still
put the
has,
curbing in, it seems sort of,
Well, they can always,
Pull up on the curb.
yeah, I
or
want,
cut into the curb cut.
Yeah, we're not
and-
talking about a huge.
I mean, if they're going to pave
curb.
another parking spot, they can cut into the curb cut and,
yeah, I just want to finish the project. So, and, yeah, so I think we just, at this point, because we don't know when he's going to actually release it, the association, we need to definitely follow up on this item.
And that portion, the letter did ask him to complete that by November 1st, because that's when paving season essentially ends. And what we had discussed was paving, putting the final coat from where the mailbox is located, and then throughout the existing development, finishing the sidewalk along there and doing the curb cuts so that project is complete. So that's the status right now. He has until November 1st. So the planning board can start thinking about whether they're going to start imposing request the building commissioner to start imposing fines because of these items not being completed.
Does the developer have a contract in hand?
That was a question I did ask him this week in an email to let me know who he's contracted with. Because they do book out, yeah.
Getting a little late.
well, so at this point, he's got till Labor Day, basically, and then it's Fred's discretion whether to start fining him, right?
Well, the planning board would have to request that enforcement be taken on the existing special permit.
All right, so we'll have that on our September 5th agenda then?
Yes, and the applicant did state that he will have plans to us for that hearing, for the special permit modification, so we can add this as a discussion item as well, progress on this.
Okay.
You have to be in session to request that from Fred?
Oh, I would assume so.
We would have to
Yes.
vote.
Yeah, you have to, you would need to vote to request enforcement on this because it was a planning board approval for the special permit. So you would just be requesting him by vote to take action.
Right, so why don't we just talk about it on the 5th? That's pretty much the first, anyway, so. All right, it is a public hearing. Do we have anyone from the public? Any comments? No. All right. Anything further from the board? Want to motion this?
So I was expecting to receive a letter from him. I don't have one. So I put in August 22nd, expecting to have one today, but,
They'll continue without him requesting one, though, right?
okay. Okay, good.
Yeah, you can still
Yeah, just,
continue it. You'll just, well, need to get something from him.
yeah, just don't read the motion verbatim.
I move that the planning board continue the public hearing to modify special permit T-OV number 2014-1 for Village Commons at 1 Gleason Street to Tuesday, September 5th at 6:30 PM.
I second that motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That is 5-0 in favor. Next item on the agenda is a discussion and possible vote on the member size of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. As you know, I'm chairing that committee, and we originally formed that committee as 15 members. We had one member pretty much immediately withdraw their name. They didn't want to make the time commitment. Then just recently, we had another member resign because they're going to college, which makes a lot of sense. But it's been difficult for us to make quorum because the open meeting laws require, or I don't know if it's open meeting laws, but the rules say that on a 15-member committee, regardless of how many active members we have, quorum is 8 out of 15. So where we only have 13, and granted, part of it's probably just the summer, but we thought at this point, since the committee's done so much work background-wise, rather than trying to fill those 2 spots and bring 2 brand-new people up to speed on everything we've accomplished so far, that it would make more sense to reform the committee as 13 members. It would just result in a quorum of 7 instead of 8, which would make it a little easier. We did have one meeting where we showed up expecting quorum and didn't get it, which was a little frustrating. And had it been 7, we would have been able to continue that meeting.
So is the implementation committee on board with reducing it to 13? They've all agreed?
Discussed that at the meeting, and they asked me to come before you and make this request.
I think when we originally were thinking about putting the group together, it was a discussion between, 10 to 15. So I don't feel the change from 15 to 13 is a major change. So,
Yeah, as I recall, we actually had originally anticipated a smaller number.
Right.
And because of the responses that we got and the matrix that we did, there were X number of at-large people who, there was kind of a separation there between really good candidates and people who just kind of threw their name in the hat. And we decided to enlarge the committee to not exclude somebody who was really invested in it. So Committee will function just as well with 13 as it would with 15.
Sounds like it already is functioning with 13, so.
I would agree with that, but one meeting, so was unfortunate, but, all right. So if there's no further questions on that?
I move that the planning board reduce the number of members to for the master plan implementation committee from 15 to 13 total members.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's 5-0 in favor. Jenny, you had an update on the affordable housing.
Yes, and I included a summary in the board's packet. So in previous years, the responsibility of monitoring the affordable housing in Westborough, including what's on the SHI, or units that should be on the SHI, fell under mass housing if financing was involved with the developer. Once the financing was paid off, the town becomes responsible for monitoring and acting as the monitoring agent. So in the past 2 years, my predecessor had outsourced this responsibility to a third-party MCO to verify the rents, which are required as part of the monitoring agent responsibilities. And now that the Affordable Housing Trust is established, part of their declaration of trust is that they can now verify the rents, they can act as the monitoring agent, they can confirm the SHI. So now, because of that, the trustees for the Affordable Housing Trust have discussed and voted to take on this responsibility on behalf of the town. So the responsibility of the monitoring agent will be moved to the Affordable Housing Trust instead of the planning director overseeing or verifying those rents. It's important to note that I would still be involved with the Affordable Housing Trust and just copied on all of these items, making sure that we still know what the rents are, what the properties are that are on the SHI. It'd still definitely be involved, but the actual verification of the rents, the utilities, everything that goes on with that would be the responsibility of the Affordable Housing Trust in their public meetings.
How much was the third part, how much were we paying the third party for that information? Do you know?
I do not know.
So it would be a savings for the town?
Yes.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that's great.
Are you suggesting we lower our budget request?
I'm not
No.
requesting anything.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have that information. This was a lot of emails back and forth to figure out exactly who was doing what, so.
I think that's great.
But this is significant that we have an Affordable Housing Trust that has the expertise to take on this responsibility.
No, and I think it makes a big difference because when you've got members of the community involved in this kind of thing, I think they have a better handle on things. And, sometimes there are situations that occur that if you have people from the town that are trying to deal with them, they may be better able and equipped to deal with things like that. So I think it's a great idea to do that.
Right? So no vote or anything is needed on that. It's just an FYI because it's a change in my responsibilities in a way for that.
Jenny, does that take effect like September 1st? I mean, is there a date in which it's going to begin?
The Affordable Housing Trust is, so the Select Board discussed this already about the Affordable Housing Trust responsibilities. And then they came to me asking that it just be on the planning board agenda and as a discussion item in case the planning board had any issues with it. And that's about it. So the Affordable Housing Trust is already going to be moving forward with it because it's in their trust documents.
Good. I mean, I just was hoping it'd move forward as soon as possible.
Oh, yes, yeah.
That's the reason I asked. I mean, because I assume it'll begin as of like the first of the month and then do it that way. So I just don't want it to get hung up in,
We already had one, Ellington, is it Ellington? That we needed to verify the rents for, and that's what kind of started this whole thing. It came to me, and I was, trying to figure out who was doing what, just because I've only been here a month, maybe. And so that's how this whole conversation came up. And so that's all set, that's verified. I talked to the Affordable Housing Trust about it, and so now moving forward, any other ones that come to the town as the monitoring agent will just go to the Affordable Housing Trust, and they will copy me on it.
good plan.
You had a couple more updates then?
Yeah, just a discussion on the planning board procedures. And then I also referenced the fee schedule on here, just as an FYI of what staff is working on in the background. And then to ask if you have any questions or comments on it. So in my short time here, I have noticed that the site plan rules and regulations and the special permit rules and regulations are two separate documents, and they're not consistent for the planning board. The special permit rules and regulations were last updated in 1993, and the site plan were more up to date. I think they were recently 2019, maybe. So there are some items in there that should be revised to reflect the current procedures. And then I also wanted to discuss potentially adding in our procedural rules in there, because although it's referenced in the charter, the town charter, what the planning board's role is, there's nothing outlining the procedures, such as the roles of the chair, the vice chair, things like that. It should just be made a little bit more clear. There's also new updates. We're working with Permit Pro to get online permitting, so that would need to be referenced in the procedures. Update to planning staff titles. It says town planner in there. That's just a small change. Then for Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53G, which is the hiring of outside consultants, that is only referenced in the site plan procedures. It's not referenced in the special permit rules. And we also, I cannot find that the planning board ever formally adopted procedures related to that. And after talking with town council, he advised that should be done. There's Chapter 44, Section 53G.5, which are the rules for how you hold money in escrow when you hire an outside consultant, and town council advised that we should be adopting those as well. And then sort of a separate item would be updates to the design guidelines and standards, which is discussed with the master plan. So that will be more of an undertaking for the design standards and guidelines, but for the procedures, I just wanted to get the board's support in updating those documents.
Right, so design standards would be where we would include something like EV stations, or is that not, would that be done separately?
You could, so design standards would be, yes, talking about sustainability, basically what you want minimally shown on the site plan or as part of a special permit.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think I don't necessarily need to know every change. At some point when you consolidate these two documents, and if you can summarize the changes and some of the rationale so that we can get a draft and look at it and then make suggestions.
It will require a public hearing
Right.
and a notice in the newspaper and,
Right.
and all of that, yeah.
And then, but as far as that goes, I'm sure you're going to discover some more inconsistencies as you go. I don't know if you're done with it yet, so, yeah.
No, I just started trying to piece them together, and I just, looking at it, it could definitely be more consistent. And I know there's a lot of things that the board does that are great, but they're not in writing for a potential applicant or developer to understand. And we've run into that recently with someone coming in because one of our procedures says that they can apply the Thursday before the Tuesday meeting and for special permits. And that is definitely not accurate.
Well, when we did the zoning change, we had, what, 70-plus inconsistencies, so make it to that many, I won't be surprised, actually.
I was just wondering, I mean, in a situation like this, maybe I know it has to be a public hearing, but at the same time, could there be maybe 6, 8 weeks, whenever, you're able to get this together kind of thing, whether we can notice almost like a work session and just that night, instead of trying to add this on to other business that we normally have, we might want to think about having
Well, we could have a work session with just 1 or 2 members. with
right,
Jenny,
and that might be.
maybe
I
look at the
certainly
draft. Are you going to put the
second
draft
that, yeah.
online?
For the public?
Yeah, I think
When
it's
the,
better
when
to
the hearing is noticed, yes. But what will happen behind the scenes is that I will be working with other staff members to get their input as well. And then routing it to the planning board if you want to individually comment on it before a public hearing, just if there's anything that you think should be added or that you think should be revised or deleted, whatever. And then that draft will be distributed for the public hearing.
But could we have a work session with, for example, you and then 2 other members of the board, just to sit with you and, kind of whittle things down? It might make it a little easier. So just think about it.
I'm fine with that. It's up to the board if you all want to.
Yeah, but I think, getting the.
Well, I think we
board
should,
involved.
let's get the draft and then discuss whether we, I see your point. It might make more sense to have 1 or 2 members sit with you after the draft is circulated and do a work session, rather than have all 5 of us come back to you individually with the same thing. We can assign somebody to be our initial draft reviewer person, or whatever, however you want to call it, and try and whittle out some of the things. I don't know, Hazel, you're good at those details if you want to do it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a great idea, and I think it's something obviously needs to be done. And, I think after a draft is done, involving a couple of other members of the board is very important, just because perspectives, and then we can.
Well, why don't we do that? Can you give Hazel the draft first, and then maybe have a meeting with her to review it and consult, so that she can maybe give you a board member's perspective, and then we'll get the draft out to everyone else for.
Yeah, no, and maybe, could we include John on this, only because he's on the zoning committee?
You willing to do that?
Yeah.
I
mean, we just did it with the zoning stuff, so.
Right,
we had to-
exactly. So I'm thinking that he would be a good addition as the second board member, and we could meet with you just.
I don't think it's a bad idea, because I don't want to have a public hearing on rules and regulations where we spend 2 hours on
That's exactly what I was trying to.
minutia.
Short,
Yeah, that would be really boring.
yeah.
Well, we've done town meetings like that, so,
Oh, yes.
all right.
So the other update was Kristen and I will be working on the fee schedule. So one small change that we will be proposing is that for the site plan review, for the planning board site plan review, the fee schedule calls for 1 cent less per square foot than a limited site plan review. So the building department, they had changed their fee schedule to be 6 cents per square foot for a limited site plan review, but the planning board site plan review still says 5 cents per square foot. So that will be something that will require a formal vote by the planning board, but we wanted to look at the fees as a whole in comparison with other towns.
Yeah, I was going to say, that would be my question, is what do other towns charge on this kind of thing? I mean, are we, half of what everybody else is charging, or are we over? So that would be sort of my question.
Yes. And then my last update was just for the B-wall. I was just asked to update on that. I met with CMRPC today about doing the story map, which would be something that a member of the public could go on the website and look through to find out how the B-wall came about, what the timeline is, and, you know, what it will potentially look like. So that's being worked on in collaboration with our regional planning agency, CMRPC. The town manager did send out letters to those that would be affected by an easement. So we're waiting to hear back on those. And then we're working on the easements with Amazon for the ones on Otis Street as well. That's my update on the B-Walt.
Okay. We have some minutes.
Yep, we have minutes for June 20th and July 18. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes? Are there any additions or corrections? Could I have a motion to approve the minutes for June 20th and July 18?
So moved. Second.
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 All in favor? Thank you, Kristen.
Was that unanimous?
What?
I didn't know if Kristen saw the vote. Was that?
Who was the first?
John?
John. and
John,
I
sorry.
seconded.
Yeah.
It
March
was
2nd.
5-0 in favor.
Sorry.
Okay. I just know, sometimes she's looking down. I didn't know if she saw our hands or not. All right, anyway, just reading through the agenda, we had another A&R plan postponed to September 5th. They're still working on that. Is there any other reports of board members who attend other committee meetings?
No, we have a design review board meeting on Thursday, and I'll give you an update after that time. We've got a couple of signs, and then I think Farouk is supposed to appear with the lighting, and I'm not sure.
Nothing else. We had downtown plan discussion on here. I don't think that's just going to stay on the agenda until we hear back on that grant, right?
Unless you want us to remove it from the agenda until we have word on what's happening. We won't know on the grant until November.
Yeah, I think you can remove that from the agenda until we hear back on the grant, and then we'll start sinking our teeth into that. Housing zoning bylaws and the highway business, is the zoning subcommittee discussing that still, or?
We have not convened yet. I do plan on setting up a meeting in late September, though, to talk about potential zoning bylaws and what priorities should be.
Okay. We did the planning board procedures. Scheduled meeting dates, we have the 5th, which is the day after Labor Day. Hope everyone can make that. The 19th, I will not be here. I just found out that there's 2 zoning articles, quote unquote, on the draft town warrant. They're just to establish dimensional regulations in an M1 zone. So it's important that, I think we need 4 for that, if I'm not correct. Is it 3 for that, or?
To vote on?
For a zoning hearing,
Oh, for a quorum, you mean?
yeah.
Yeah, you would need 3.
Only 3? Okay,
It's just a recommendation.
okay, that's fine.
I won't be there either.
Okay, so
Okay.
if anyone else that can't make it on the 19th, then we either need to reschedule that meeting, or,
I'll confirm the 3. My other concern is that we do have a special permit and site plan review coming for that date that they are advertising for the 19th, so we wouldn't be able to cancel the hearing completely. You could decide to have an additional hearing potentially at the end of September when all the members are present, but for a special permit, for example, there needs to be 4 members to vote on a special permit.
Vote to continue, or?
You can vote to continue, but for a special permit, yes, but you would have to do the
Well,
Mullen rule
if we
for
only have 3
one.
at the 19th, we could, the 3 here could vote to continue that to the 20.
Correct, but you would have to have that agenda still. You would have to have the meeting posted.
Okay.
Does everybody, do we want to look at potentially another meeting in September, or is that, or we could just move, we can't just move the meeting, right? They've already advertised for the 19th.
They will be submitting it soon.
I don't see us making a decision the first hearing for any of those, no matter what it is. Right?
I would agree. I mean,
It might,
this is a big site plan review and special permit hearing, so.
there's honestly a good chance they won't be ready for the 19th, right? Am I mistaken in my skepticism there?
If nothing else, we can just do introduction.
I think it would be fair to allow them to do their presentation, at least on the 19th, to the members that are here, and then the other members can watch the presentation and be ready for the next hearing. The only other consideration aside from that hearing is that the budget approvals are coming up, the budget hearings with the select board. And so that will need to be a discussion item, either the first meeting in October, or I was initially hoping for late September to start talking about it.
I mean, I think as far as the special permit goes, I guess I'd like to see if it's going to come through on the 19th, only because we really need to move these things along. And, so if there were enough of us here that we could just listen to it, since we're not going to be voting on anything, I think it's important to kind of move things through, particularly with things like special permits.
Kristen, did they end up submitting today? Did she come in with the,
Not before I came down here, but I told her we were open till 8, so.
okay. We had met with the applicant this morning, and she was going to come back with some changes that needed to be made to the application.
If they don't get it in today, are they going to miss the deadline for the 19th?
Oh, actually, I'm sorry, I forgot. She did drop it off right before.
Oh, okay.
A few envelopes, yep, we do have it. We just
We've had a couple of fires today.
Yeah.
Okay, good, so, yes.
All right, so what else? Next meeting's the 5th. Do we have anything else to discuss tonight?
Is there anything else? I haven't read, I saw the draft town warrant, but I, quite frankly, haven't looked at it yet. So there's nothing on there that concerns us other than a couple of minor
It's pretty
zoning
short.
things.
The only thing I found, not interesting, but the Affordable Housing Trust is proposing to take over the housing partnership duties, because the housing partnership is traditionally struggled to find members, and housing trust can do everything the partnership does.
That makes perfect sense.
It's really a redundancy. And but I don't think we need to vote to support or not support that necessarily, but we can if you want to discuss it, and I can put it on an agenda.
We can think about it on the 5th. Yeah, I just did, as I said, I hadn't looked at it yet, so.
Sure. Okay. All right. So if there's nothing else,
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
all those in favor? And that is 5-0. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.